thanks to the Newark Firefighters Pipe Band for leading in our Valor Award and Special Commendation recipients. Thank you very much. The 200 Club of Essex County is a nonprofit charitable organization incorporated under the laws of the state of New Jersey. Its mission is simply to help provide for dependents of police officers and firefighters in Essex County and state troopers in New Jersey who lose their lives in the line of duty. We are the oldest 200 club in the state. That's the organization, not the Board of Trustees. We started in 1966, and when a group of business leaders organized the first 200 club. The organization was started out of the awareness that the public's need for safety, security, and protection could only be assured through the dedication to duty, courageous vigilance, and selflessness of those public service who wear the public safety uniform. Never was this more apparent than 10 years ago, and it's 10 years already, when America was attacked at the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. There are now 18 200 clubs throughout the state, each of them committed to the simple principle, we care for those who care for us. The way we fulfill our mission is to provide for dependents of police officers and firefighters who lose their lives in the line of duty, and we do that through a cash stipend to the surviving spouse or dependent with no conditions. And we also provide educational assistance to each surviving child prior to the child's 26th birthday. This is all made possible through the generosity of our members and friends, and over the years, our club has provided more than $1.75 million in line of duty stipends, scholarships, and Valor Awards. We'll acknowledge all of our special guests later in the program, but I'd like to give a special welcome to the Maplewood Police Chief Robert Semino, who's president of the Essex County Police Chiefs Association, and to West Orange Fire Chief Peter Smeraldo, the president of the Essex County Fire Chiefs Association. I'd also like to give a special welcome to Leonard Gray and retired New Jersey State Police Captain Fred Romanowski, representing the 200 Club of Atlantic and Cape May counties. Thank you guys for making that long trip up here. Appreciate it.
Sheriff Funtour reading the honor roll.
Although we were scared the loss of public safety lives in Essex County in 2010, 2010 was nonetheless another costly year in terms of lives lost by our brave law enforcement officers and courageous firefighters. If you look at the program on your table, you will notice that since the inception of this club in 1967, we have lost 83 brothers and sisters since that time. Again, fortunately last year we did not lose any of our brothers and sisters. However, representing public safety departments across our nation, 161 law enforcement officers and 87 firefighters died in 2010 while performing their duties of protecting those they have sworn to serve. Among those were 3 New Jersey police officers and 2 firefighters who sacrificed their lives in the line of duty. Let us remember New Jersey Police State Trooper Mark Castellano, Teaneck Police Officer John Abraham, Lakewood Police Officer Christopher Matlock, Firefighter Edward Eckert of the Stafford Township Police Fire Department, and Firefighter Kenneth O'Donnell of the Elmwood Park Fire Department. These 5 New Jersey public safety officers and all of the valiant officers and firefighters who gave their lives in the line of duty hold a special place in our hearts and in the hearts of the people they serve. As we continue to mourn their untimely deaths, let us also celebrate their lives and their magnificent contributions in making our community safer and more secure. I ask that we all stand and offer a moment of silence. Shortly after 6 p.m. on January 30th, 2010, coldest night of the year, Officer Gerald Veneziano left his home and was driving to Fairfield Police Headquarters to report for his overnight duty shift, as he had done hundreds of times before. Little did he know that the events were about to transpire that evening would ultimately change the course of his life and impact an entire community. While traveling on Route 3 and for reasons that remain a mystery even today, Officer Veneziano began to be followed without provocation by an aggressive driver. The stalking continued for well over 10 miles. Now in Fairfield, Veneziano contacted an on-duty officer via cell phone in an attempt to have this individual stopped. Unfortunately, all Fairfield officers were busy with other emergency calls that required their attention, namely a working fire and a person almost across the street who was dying from a heart problem. As Veneziano pulled into the parking lot of the municipal complex, the stalker pulled into his adjacent parking lot. Believing this individual posed a threat to the public and desirous of obtaining this person's identification for possible issuance of a summons, Veneziano drove to the stalker's parking lot. With complete disregard to his own personal safety and not knowing that backup would not be immediately available, Veneziano pulled up to the suspect and identified himself as a police officer. When Veneziano asked the driver what he was doing, the driver, with a blank stare on his face, pulled out a handgun and fired at the officer. The first shot struck Veneziano in the mouth area. Although severely wounded and in shock, Veneziano's police training and experience took over. He also sought cover and refuge outside of his vehicle. Unfortunately, Veneziano's vehicle was still in gear and he rolled away, leaving him fully exposed. As Veneziano crawled away, the gunman fired his weapon repeatedly, striking the officer 8 times in the chest, arm, and leg. With multiple gunshot wounds and bleeding profusely, Veneziano returned fire, but the gunman fled the scene. Knowing that his life depended upon being found, Officer Veneziano somehow found the inner strength to crawl to the street. He was initially aided by a passing motorist and then by a variety of first responders. At the scene, Veneziano was able to provide vital intelligence about the shooter and his vehicle, which would later prove invaluable to investigators. The gunman was eventually apprehended and charged with this heinous crime. Also, Veneziano is here with us today due to a series of events that can be categorized as nothing short of miraculous. First of all, the officer was in excellent shape, both physically and mentally, at the time of the shooting. Next, Fairfield Officer Jeffrey Diddick was on the desk at the time of the incident and calmly navigated the chaotic elements needed to render assistance to the officer. Other Fairfield police officers who were mitigating another medical emergency were able to immediately respond to the scene, providing first aid. West Caldwell police officer Michael Lohr, a 2-time combat veteran in Iraq, who was experienced in combat wounds and applied a solution known as Quick Clot, which always carried with him to Veneziano. Finally, Officer Veneziano was airlifted to University Hospital by the state police helicopter, where our most distinguished trauma surgeons happened to be filling in for the doctor. Officer Veneziano is one tough bird. He was determined not only to survive, but also to thrive. He underwent many long and arduous operations and painful recovery procedures. He is now back on the job and is a role model for all law enforcement officers. Throughout this entire event and its ensuing recovery ordeal, Officer Veneziano demonstrated tremendous bravery and outstanding professionalism. 200 Club is proud to present the VALOR Award to Officer Darrell Veneziano.
The individual to safety. He engaged in this effort without any personal protective equipment, all the while taking the full force of heat and smoke. These actions were all taken prior to the arrival of any fire apparatus, and thus Mr. O'Hearn did not have the benefit of any protective hose line. Unfortunately, Mr. O'Hearn's efforts were unsuccessful and resulted in the fatality of the second individual. Mr. O'Hearn was taken to the hospital for treatment and observation as well. In view of this exemplary effort, the 200 Club of Essex County is honored to recognize West Caldwell firefighter John A. O'Hearn with its 2010 VALOR Award. And Charles Krauser responded to the call when the fire department was dispatched. Officers Chris Stefano and Cruiser were the only officers working that night, and they attempted to open the doors of the burning car to remove the victims. Firefighter Henry Thorsenhauser went directly to the scene of the accident, and with his help they were able to extricate the victims. This was accomplished while the car was burning, and the only protection afforded was the use of a fire extinguisher. The fire department had not yet arrived on the scene to provide any additional support. This was also done while there was an imminent threat of the vehicle exploding and trapping the rescuers as well as the victims. Fortunately, all the 5 victims were able to be removed from the cars, and they were transported to area hospitals for treatment of multiple injuries. Had it not been for the quick actions of police officers Michael Crispano and Charles Krauser and firefighter Henry Fossenhauser, with great risk to their personal safety, the results could have been horribly and tragically different. Congratulations.